Hey, what's up, guys? It's Isa with Journey to Programming, and what I want to talk about right now is getting your first software development job, and that's for anybody coming out of college or coming from a different industry. So first, I'll start off with how did I get my first job in software development, and it's really kind of a funny story. So I graduated with a degree in computer science, and when I graduated, I applied for a variety of software engineering roles in San Diego. So my undergraduate's in computer science from San Diego State, and I applied for companies all around San Diego, and I really didn't venture too far outside of San Diego. In retrospect, that was a mistake. But in any case, what ended up happening is I had no success landing a software engineering job immediately graduating college as a computer science graduate, okay? I applied to jobs, I did get a few interviews, I miserably failed them. And it wasn't that I didn't know how to program, it was just complete lack of preparation for the technical interview process. I had seen some success, it was limited, but it still was some success in the phone technicals. But I had never been exposed to the on-site technicals, which included whiteboarding and being prepared to ask technical questions and solve them in person. It was nerve-wracking, it was difficult, and I didn't land a job right out of college. And many of you guys have probably gone through similar experiences. So instead, what I did is I jumped into business for myself. I worked in a little startup that I began with my brother and a few others, and we ran it for about 2.5 years. We saw some success. We ran into cash flow issues. We learned a ton. I got experience there, and ultimately I ended up being able to make my way through that experience into a software engineering role at Lockheed Martin. Now, you may be wondering, okay, how did you, Isa, get that role at Lockheed Martin? Well, at that time, I had been submitting a ton of applications. You guys hear me say apply all the time. And at that time, I applied, and I just kept on applying. And ultimately, I landed a few interviews at DoD companies. I don't know what it was. For some reason, DoD companies are the ones that responded to me. I applied for game programming positions. I applied for tech companies like Google and Facebook at the time. But the only companies that got back to me at that time were DoD companies, and specifically it was BAE Systems, General Atomics, and Lockheed Martin. And I made it through the interview process, and I ended up getting an offer. So the way I did it is I wrote up my resume from scratch at that time. You know, my prior experience applying for jobs was out of college, so I had a whole bunch of college experience. I wrote all my projects from classes. I wrote relevant coursework on there. And then I had work experience, which really wasn't relevant to the industry. It was like little jobs I did out of college, and then I had some contract work I did as a web developer for several years before that. But what I changed this time is I rewrote my entire resume to include my education as a computer science graduate, and then I touched on a few relevant courses and good projects that I did in my undergraduate studies, and then I really focused on my professional experiences from there. I had now 2.5 years of professional business experience as a software developer doing web applications, mobile apps, and games, running my own company, Quadrant Studios at that time. And then I also had that contract experience, which I had previously when I had already applied to companies years before out of college, but I was able to reword them in a better way. Having that business experience changed my resume enough so and changed the way I communicate so that I was able to better place my experience and sell it on that resume. Because this time around, although I only got real interviews with DoD companies, I obviously had some successes. So I had changed things up. I showed that I communicated better and I had more relevant professional experience. That got them interested. I landed interviews. My first interviews with all of those companies were technical phone calls after the recruiting call, okay? So they all began with a quick recruiting chat. It was nobody from the actual hiring team or the team I was going to be working with, but they were recruiters. Then that moved into a technical call with somebody from the teams. And I was able to do well enough on those. They asked really general problems. They didn't give me any coding technical online like you face with tech companies. They asked me basic stuff like, tell me about polymorphism, and do you know what overriding, overloading, and general polymorphism type kind of questions would be. I mean, I've been out of college for several years now, so I'm not even thinking about it. But you should be able to know those out of college and expect that a phone technical may include somebody asking that, especially if it's a non-technical company. I've found tech companies usually ask you to do a coding test of some sort, and it's kind of shifted over the years. I did this years and years ago, so it's changed a little bit. And one thing that I want to share with you guys is I have a lot of friends who have got in the industry over the past 10 years who have got their first jobs recently. Some of them have got their jobs 10 years ago. But what I found all of them have done in order to land that first job is they've rewritten their resume. So if they graduated, they've rewritten them, added some education, added some very fine points, and communicated clearly on those resumes how their skills and their experiences apply to the job that they're applying to. So those companies, when the recruiter sees that resume, they're able to read, okay, this guy has the experience, whether it be a degree, whether it be a boot camp or a lot of self-study, they have experience and knowledge, and they're able to tell by the way those resumes are formed with clear examples and history that shows that they've been programming in, say, Java or C++ or JavaScript using XYZ frameworks. Maybe they're a backend developer using Node, or they've been using some PHP frameworks like Laravel, right? And they've been able to explain, okay, I've been a backend developer for the past 3 years for, let's say, XYZ company, and I've been writing code in PHP using Laravel to create a stack and framework that allows external partners to grab content from our databases and use them to apply our services to their mobile applications. Okay? So that is an example of what they may be doing. They'll state, okay, so I designed and created the API endpoints for our vendors and our partners to be able to access their data using maybe tokens or using secure auth. All right. So that's an example. Another one would be I use C# and Unity 3D game engine to create mobile applications for the Oculus, right? So that's a popular device right now. It gives you a clear example of what you're doing and how that applies to the current company, especially if you're applying for a game company or a VR company. That's a great example. So they learned to do that either through talking to others who have applied recently, or through failure in not getting return calls to their applications. And ultimately they pivoted, they created a new resume, they applied, like I always say, and they were able to land their jobs after going through multiple denials and interview processes, and ultimately landing it through a good, clear communication and a good updated resume and application materials. So if you're currently applying and you are not seeing any success or getting callbacks, then really consider re-pivoting your resume and application materials. Rethink whether or not your example projects are being communicated clearly, and your history or your experience is very well defined. And then start resubmitting your applications and submit them, see if you're getting feedback. Another thing you could possibly do is reach out to recruiters at the companies you're interested in on LinkedIn. Find them on LinkedIn, add them, send them a message, say, hey, I'm really interested in working for your company, but I'm curious if you guys are hiring, and if you are, and I submit an application, what would make my application seem stronger so I can land an interview? Most recruiters, most people that work for a company, maybe send that to engineers, are going to help you out. They want to genuinely help people out, so they're going to respond to you in most cases. And that's going to give you a leg up. So now you know exactly how to apply your efforts in resume creation and your applications. Those are just a few tips that I hope you guys could take away in getting your first job. It worked for me years ago. Since then, I haven't had any trouble, and hopefully it works for you guys. If you guys can, definitely check out our channel and subscribe to us at Journey to Programming. Have a good one, you guys.